Good evening. Thank you for your patience. We are going to go ahead and get started with our special meeting this evening on May 29th, 2014 at 5:45. We will be discuss and/or take action on the 2014-2015 fiscal budget of the City of Fairview. I'm going to turn the floor over to CFO, Mr. Daugherty.
You have received copies of the new state format budget. It's supposed to correlate with our audit. And well, I guess, were there any questions? It shows the fiscal year 2013 actuals, the estimated 2014 numbers, and then the proposed 2015. After, I guess, as far as for time, Mr. Cantrell, would you like to address the time issue as far as passing the budget?
Hey, Tom, can you move your microphone closer to you
Yes.
and make sure it's on? Okay. Thank you. I saw you back there.
The budget is due to be passed by July 1st. There's now a requirement that once it's passed, a copy will need to be sent to the comptroller's office. We don't have the requirements of public debt, this type of thing, so they don't necessarily have to approve it, but a copy has to go to them. That means that your first reading, if it's not tonight, will need to be at the next meeting, because your second reading cannot be, all ordinances, minimum time between the first reading and the second reading cannot be less than 7 days. So that means you could have to have it on the 8th day. You got 14 days between meetings, so that'd be okay. The normal procedure that we have when you have to advertise, unless the statute says something else, and there are a few isolated instances in which the statute says something else, that you have to have the notice in the paper at least 10 days before the second reading, the notice and the hearing of the public hearing. Some of the city charters deal with notice differently, especially your home rule charters and this type of thing. But if you do not have that type of a charter, then under TCA 656-206 is the one that requires a minimum 10-day notice before the hearing, which from a procedural standard, we normally prefer that the notice goes to the paper about 15 days before that hearing, because that gives you time. If you're in the middle of the cycle of the paper coming out, you still are sufficient to get the 10-day notice. So if you had 14 would be okay. If you had you could actually announce, if you have the first reading at your first regular meeting in June, then you could announce actually that the second reading and the public hearing, you could have that put in the paper before that. You don't have to have the first reading before you announce that you're going to have the public hearing. Another thing that the board needs to consider at the same time with the first reading, you're going to need to consider a tax rate, because you're required by law to set a tax rate to support this budget. In most cities, and it's the easiest way to do it here, is they have them in the same, and that's what's proposed on this, they have them in the same ordinance, because they're so closely tied together you can't have one without the other. So if you have the first reading of the budget at your next meeting, or if you have the first reading here tonight of the budget, that's fine. But you need to schedule your first reading of the section related to the tax rate for your first meeting in June, so that we can get the public hearing and get it out of the way. You could either put it at the regular meeting, or you could have a special meeting before. That's up to you. There are, as I said, there are some that your public hearing has to be held differently, and just some examples. I don't want, if you're changing a subdivision regulation, that public hearing has to be 30 days before you have that discussion. If you're having an annexation, it has to be at least 15 days, but this only has to be 10, and your budget ordinance would become final at the second reading or 15 days from the first reading, whichever is the last to occur.
Now, none of that's changed since last year, that's just
No, ma'am, that's,
repeating the
it has, no,
same?
that's just,
Okay,
yes, there's been no change in that.
okay.
Thanks, Larry. Basically, the differences between now and a couple weeks ago, we did some cuts in the departments, and also I did get the projections in for the sales tax, and it was enough of an improvement or enough of a growth that I did feel confident in adding revenue to that line item in the budget. So if you look at the numbers in the revenue that increased, the property tax increased. I went with we did have a 2% uncollectible, changed that to a 1% uncollectible. Then on the sales tax, I did have it at $110,000 per month. I added it to $115,000 a month. And the local taxes, I believe, went from $45,000 a month to $50,000 a month. Everything on the revenue, I feel, is very, very conservative, and it is my hope that we exceed that and our reserves are substantially able to put some back. I feel very confident that Fairview is right on the verge of some exciting things happening as far as development and new businesses coming in, and I feel like our revenue is lagged, but I believe it's going to catch up.
No offense, but we've been in hope of that for several years, and we haven't seen to our expectations. So that, still, it's always good to be hopeful, and I know you went in and you cut, and you're conservative, and you're in the right mindset. But I want to make sure that we're not using, over projection, just because 1 month has given a new light. I don't want us to get caught up in the mindset that, because we still have 12 months. And, so, and there's going to be better months and lower months. So when you went back through and added in, how did you come up with the figure of the increase in those areas? Like when you went back through and said, okay, well, we've seen an increase, I feel a little bit better about moving it up.
Based on the numbers that came back from the Tennessee Department of Revenue, we went up to $95,000 in sales tax on the county share, which is the big number, the 31610.
Okay, so it's all based on sales tax for,
Yes, that's our sales tax that comes in through the county.
Are you at line 31610?
Yes.
All right, a minute ago, it is part of your question, Ms.
Okay.
Carroll. A minute ago, you said something about going to 110,000 per month.
That's what I did have it projected at our last meeting.
Okay, because if you take the projected of 2013, I was tracking you until you went there, the 925,000 projected, 566, and then you've got a proposed 1,308,000 that number divides out to 37,800 per month, not 100,000. So I just want to either clarify what I did in the division, or your 110 you stated is not what you're escalating that. It's only 37,000 a month.
Are you dividing the proposed number?
The projected on 13-14 budget, the difference where you was saying you were anticipating additional revenue in the county sales tax, you went up to 1,380,000?
This projected is for closing out this year.
Correct. So that would be what you received
That's what I'm
as of
projecting.
June 30th, projected of the county sales tax.
Yes,
So then you increased for the next 12 months to 1,380,000.
yes.
That difference divided by 12 is 37,008 a month. A minute ago, you said you raised it and divided by 12, it was 110,000. So I missed something or misunderstood.
I was talking about the total on the proposed. At our original meeting,
But it almost, it kind of bears the answer to Ms. Carroll's, is the difference of the 925 and the 1,380,000. What puts you projecting that difference is pretty much her question.
Walmart is in business and their sales tax is starting to come in,
Okay.
of which we have seen nil this year. Hardly any. So that is pretty much the entire amount of the projection.
But you're not.
The
you just-
454,000 in sales tax on the county side is what you're saying we can expect in the next year from Walmart.
Yes.
So it's using Walmart projections
Choosing, yes, what has come in
for
since,
all 12, or no, just what's come in?
yes.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to clarify that, because as we talk in circle, staying on page.
In that projection that we'll get 454,000 in county taxes more than we received this budget.
Correct.
And then you raised 160,000 that we would be getting in the local sales tax.
Yes.
And that is 13,000 a month, which is pretty much what you just said. The very first one, when you said added to 12 months, I'm still not clear on that.
This local sales tax comes in through our state shared on the 20th, and it's been getting increases as well. I believe,
Yeah, that's only 12% increase. I believe that's probably very fair to your numbers. The 20% increase, are you averaging about 37,000 a month?
I
With your
believe so.
projections you've got with Walmart thus far? With your actuals you've got with Walmart thus far, is it around 37 a month?
We did 43 last month.
Okay. So the 110 division, I don't know, but I may have misunderstood you. But that would be 37,800 projected a month. And if that's about what you're resolving, then that really was our question.
Restate that one more.
You're not estimating, you are actual on what you've received from Walmart,
Yeah.
and then you're multiplying that times 12, which is the difference of the 925 and the 1,380, the 1,380,000.
No, I am estimating, I am projecting, I believe we will see substantially more in sales tax than we have. I believe that 1.38 is a conservative number.
Y'all are saying the same thing.
I believe so.
Yeah.
The 110 threw me off. I did the math and it just went left.
If I could paraphrase it, last month, we got a $43,000 increase. He's using less than that, a $37,000 increase, which means that if the trend continues, because the 43,000 was higher than the 27,000 the month before and the original 15 or 18 for the partial month. So if the trend continues, what he's telling us is if we adopt this figure, we are adopting a conservative figure based upon what we've already seen.
Realized, right.
Not doing like we did last year, where we were anticipating not knowing anything. We are adopting off real numbers. But he believes that the 43 is going to go on up. So that's where our surplus is going to come from, that we can reinstall our reserve funds.
Yeah, and
If I understand you correctly.
Yeah,
So your
yes.
110
That's what I
number
understood too,
was your
but
full
here's my
budget
problem.
number. Now I understand.
But, I understood, and that's what I'm saying is we're using a 12-month, you did an average based off the last 4 months, and we're projecting for a whole 12 months, where in other workshops, we talked about only using what we actually saw. But instead, we're doing a projection, which that's what a budget is, I understand that. But that puts us back using Walmart money, and we only have a 4-month window. And that's what I was getting at with my questions.
But I think we're safe because we're using
getting it.
actual during the 4 months, and we know that
'Cause
that
last year we had
4 month
nothing.
doesn't include any boom time. It includes
But we're-
in the lowest retail cycle time, and it doesn't include any holiday spending. So it's
Yeah.
an ultra-conservative number, I think, so.
Well, it is conservative, and I agree with that, but my concern is we need to rebuild back money in our reserves. And I think if we go in and say, we got Walmart, we see what they can do, and we spend every dime, then we're no better off at the end of next budget year than we are right now. And that would be my only concern with going forward with this thought process.
I just don't read it that way though, Commissioner Carroll,
know.
because I think that next month we'll see that it's higher than 43, and the next month it's higher than 43. And since he's building at 37, then each month, that means anything over 37 is going to be extra money that could be put back into those funds you're talking about.
Yeah, well, I know most people didn't see it that way last year too, but we did not pull off the money. So I'm just trying, I love ultra conservative, but, I wish this would be a rebuilding year where we rebuild our reserve instead of going ahead and using the Walmart projections at a conservative route. I don't mind using 4 months. So whatever the 4 months they brought in into next year's budget, but projecting 12 months at, X amount is where we're going to get back in the same line. I think this should be our rebuilding year, and we rebuild our reserves. We don't put a whole lot of fluff, which I know your departments have made tons of cuts, and I appreciate that. And I think it's real easy at 6 months to go back and say, look, Walmart did just what Tom said. Let's pay, let's buy this. Let's give the employees this. I think it's so much easier to go back and give money where we missed budgeted than it is to budget high and then try to figure out how we're going to pay for it.
Excuse me, Tom, what's your projection for the increase in the reserve with these
I'm
figures?
projecting with these numbers a decrease.
Minus 1925, is that,
Okay.
was that the 524, 867 number? That would give you that answer to Commissioner Sutton's? I come with $1,929 in the red.
Well, if you go onto the budget, I'm showing total appropriations of $5,586,925 with revenue of $5,291,325, and using a fund balance of $571 for the difference. That again, feeling like that is a conservative revenue number, but unless I think when you go on the expense side, we can hit it from that end, but I feel like we're to the point to where we're going to be cutting service. If we start, I mean, if we're gonna, just depending on what the board wants to do, you know, is looking at this budget, I guess, I just feel like there's a lot of optimism as far as on the revenue side. Now, I don't mean to, if I didn't feel that way, I wouldn't say it. I felt like if we were going to flatline, I would tell you. But anyway, with these numbers, it's not exactly what I wanted to present, but it is balanced, and it gets us going, and I can hold very strong the reins, do monthly analysis, and say, yes, this happened the way we thought it was going to happen, and go and just be very, very careful in
That
what
would
we
be
do. And we've been doing that. But I will tell you, I am concerned about making it to property tax season with cash flow. So we can get, that's not really a topic for this right now, but it is. I appreciate everybody's perspective, but there's really, without trying, I don't want to cry wolf either, and then the revenue just come in and we've made all these cuts or done things that we regret because, you know, we put all this money into training, we put all this money into resources.
We can add it back, though. We have that power. We can amend the budget. I understand what you're saying, Tom, and you're right. I know you, but where we're at the end of this budget and going into the next budget, I mean, it's going to be tight. So I would much rather see us take and decide, okay, what are we going to cut? I know y'all have done that, and so we need to continue with that mindset because I don't know. It just seems like the Walmart projections are great. We know Taco Bell's coming, and it's all good. But we can go back and amend the budget in any time and add whatever we need to add. So to make a projection for the budget to be balanced
Is not right.
it's not going to work for us. And you came into a mess. This is not, your fault. You've had to figure out how to get this, and y'all put the halt on it because, it is what it is. I know that Commissioner Basell says, well, it's a property tax. We lowered it, and this is the effect of the 3 years. That could be it. I don't know. I'm not so sure if we wouldn't have taken a more conservative budget for the last 3 years, that we wouldn't have been in this mess. And we would have been fine without the property tax. We can't, I'm not expecting you to analyze what's happened, but either way, we have a real problem. We don't have the reserves that we should have, and we need to build them back up. So using Walmart money to build the reserves, because I know your projections are probably right, and you put a lot of thought process behind it, but I would rather find ways to have a balanced budget now without using Walmart money, build it up, the reserves back to where they need to be, and then we can come back and do a budget amendment.
I agree. I think that's conservative. I have another question about the expenses of hiring new employees in this budget. Can you share with me? I know on the ordinance it says a number of full-time, the fund balances and the number of full-time equivalent employees that would be attached.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't see that here, but I don't know if that may answer my question.
Well, and I want to piggyback off that question because looking through, this is the first budget we haven't had the salaries of the employees included in it. And is it in there? Did
I'm
I
not
miss
sure if it's the
some?
same document, but yes, that,
And the first one, but I was looking at line items to make sure there was no variation. Is there going to be any variations on,
new
line item?
employees in this budget and how much that adds to this budget.
There'd be no new employees. There are two that are moving from part-time to full-time. One's firefighter and the other was a police IT position. I can get you that information. I've got it printed out in my office. I jotted down the amount of employees that are in each department, but I haven't put it on the final draft. I can either give you that verbally, or I can give you, I've got a list of all the full-time employees and their salaries. I can go get that and bring it to you now, if you'd like to see it.
well, I mean, I'm just, and we're not voting tonight that I know of, but I was just in the mindset of, it gives me an idea of looking at the differences, okay? Are we adding a new line item?
And that's why I asked that, saying, okay, if you had raises, new monies, new job salaries, those are some places that you can say this is going to be postponed and see what kind of savings
Yeah.
to add to her conversation and put a dollar to it.
Everything in here is at the current rate. There are no raises and no salary increases, except for the one person, the IT person is getting, going from full-time to part-time, and it is a salary increase.
Tom, as I read it, though, that there's no cost of living raise, but there is the merit raise, right?
Not in these, not in,
When you look at salaries, it says 2%, is that right, or did I change? Where up at the top of expenditure, it says 2,384,222, and that's a 2% increase over the previous year because of the 2% merit raise system. Is that right? I'm misreading that.
it did go up 2%, but I believe that is because of the two going in from part-time to full-time.
With-
So this doesn't include their 2% merit raise?
No. The 2% would have been right about $52,000. And I kept everything exactly it is at the moment, except for those two things.
Well, and that is something that you can always go back, if we don't spend every Walmart dime, that we could go back and say, 6 months into it, we're doing great, let's honor the merit raise.
Right.
And it would be easily done. A lot of governments say, we're going to give you a cost of living, but we're not going to give it to you until January 1st. I mean, there's different ways. I mean, you can always go back and add that at a later date. So-
But it's not included in this budget. It's already cut, and we still have the difference.
Correct.
And we're using Walmart projections for 12 months.
Larry, do we have an obligation on that 2%? Can we do that? That's tied to those step increases, that says if you work a year, the way we passed the ordinance was you work a year, your evaluation is successful, you get a 2% raise.
If
We
you
have
have,
the ability to renege on that.
you have an obligation right now, you could go back and you'd have to redo your
Ordinance.
ordinance. Yes,
We
sir.
have to change the ordinance.
Right.
And
If
you
we don't have
can't-
the money,
you
we
couldn't
can't pay.
retroactive the
No,
ordinance.
no, you can't retroactive.
So that money, now, we don't have to give a cost of living, because the way we set up the ordinance was, cost of living would be determined upon the budget. But the 2% merit raise has to be granted, or the ordinance has to be changed.
Or the ordinance has to be changed. Now, you can, you could go back and retroactively give me the 2%, but you can't go back and retroactively take it away from me. In other
And we
words,
could defer the payment of the 2%.
Yes.
But it would have to go back to the July 1st date.
right.
Well, based on what you just said, we could take that and vote tonight not to,
Can't vote tonight.
yeah, we can't, or the first meeting, and you still have your two readings, and it would still be enough time.
Yes, if, I would suggest if you want to do that, that you have your first reading at your first board meeting in June. But I would go ahead and your second reading would be at the second meeting in June, but I would put out my notice of the public hearing and the second reading, at least get it to the newspaper prior to your first meeting. There's nothing wrong with that, but it would be sure you don't fall on a cycle where, that you can't get the 10-day notice, because if that happened, you would have to reschedule it and have a special meeting because you must have the 10-day notice. But yes, you can defer when you pay it, but you would have to either pay it or redo the ordinance.
And that exercise was real good because we were looking for money to be able to save, but if it's not in the budget,
Well, yeah, my point was that
And-
unless we're planning to do something, it needs to be added to the budget.
because of the ordinance issue.
Yes,
But
ma'am.
there does become the discussion, if the money is not there, you have to, something has to change. You can't
Well-
knowingly go into a let's pay you, but we don't have money. I mean,
No, but you can't not put it into the budget because you have a legal obligation to fund it.
unless we address the,
Now, when we pay it, we wait till June the 30th of 2015 to pay it because we didn't have the cash flow. But if I understood Larry correctly, right now, everybody's going to get a 2% raise that gets a successful evaluation. So we either have to change the ordinance or we've got to add that 2%, whatever that is, into this line item. So it makes the issue, I guess.
one way or the other's got to be
Yeah,
together.
It's got to be dealt with one way or the other.
Well, you know, and I understand the employees are expecting or have been guaranteed, but we can change the ordinance at any time, just as easily as we put a step plan in, it can be taken away, and, you know, you just have to change the ordinance. I know it's not good practice for people to think they're gonna get it and then take good employees and then say you're not gonna get it, but I think at this point, we don't have a lot of choices. It's either, you know, our city manager is gonna have to lay people off, or we're gonna have to find ways to cut. And, you know, I don't think we wanna do that either, so I think we need to find, some way to say this is a rebuilding year, let's do some compromising, we're all compromise, find, you know, areas that we could do because we have great employees and I want them to stay. And I think it's real easy for us, if Walmart and Taco Bell and whatever you want to put on the list is good, we can go back and just as we've done in the past, is be really good to our employees and, you know, try to give them what they need. But with no reserves, we're in a different ballgame.
Well, we're double the debt service that we had last year. So that's where the tightness of any excess is going, to pay the debt. If that was not there, we may not have the negative to be discussing whether it's tight to pay the raises that are in the ordinances, as well as what other expenses may have incurred. I have a few questions about just some line things for clarity. Let me run there while we're, and I haven't left your question, Alan, but we can't vote on it, so we'll need
No,
to come to what we need to do.
No, I
The
just
budget,
wanted
I'm
to
sorry,
be sure it got.
the agenda was put out today, so if it needed to be added, the subsequent information may need to be added for discussion.
Well, I'm not gonna be at the next meeting, so if we're looking, we're gonna need to set another special meeting to have that vote, if we want all 5 of us here.
I would prefer a full board to vote on our budget, yes.
I would appreciate that, I'm sorry, there's, we already had this already did. But, it's just, as I was making notes about what I didn't know, that was one of the things that,
Good point, yeah.
that we haven't, and we have, if we're gonna change the ordinance, we have to do that, before the end of June, because if we don't do it by the end of June, the approval happens on June the 30th. So the day the first budget starts there, the contract is, the ordinance takes hold, and we owe the 2%. So it has to be changed this month if we're gonna delay it, or if we're gonna remove it, or reduce it to 1%, or do something with it.
Okay, that won't go away, but I don't know if we can settle it at this moment. We definitely can't vote on it. So let me ask you some clarifying questions under expenditures, please. And we've got time, okay. The professional services, line 250, do you feel that that service has changed, or have you moved that category in another direction? If you're projecting 86,000 and you're now proposing 36, the 50,000, did you move that somewhere else, or did we just not gonna have those services this year, or what?
Should not have those services this year.
Could you give me who they are maybe, or what that 50,000 expenditure was?
There were several legal investigations that went on in the city this year.
Okay. How about the engineering and landscaping services? 62,000 down to 37. Was there a specific, or did any of that get moved to another line item?
Nothing got moved to the line item. Once we pay the engineering fees, they're paid. We don't have to pay for them twice, but some of this, and I may let City Manager Hall and Mr. Umber expound on this, but we're going at all new grants and things that need, projects that need engineering fees in a different light, where we're not spending the money and then stopping the project, where we're going to be a little, hopefully, much more economically smart about the engineering fees.
Tom, is this where we use engineers to compensate for the lack of a codes director for a period of time until Mr. Umber came here?
I believe not. I believe this all happened prior to all that.
'Cause I know that
Mr. Hall, would
there
you like to expand on that?
There was a fee involved there.
Thank you, Tom. Most of this is engineering fees that were designed for Lake Van in the park, various other, the road to Bowie Lake Road, engineering fees. I think those two alone is over $40-something thousand.
And Triangle School probably had a lot.
And then the Safe Routes to School, that's $30-something thousand right there that Frank is trying to move forward with. We have an 18-month extension on that project, I believe. So the Safe Routes to School, we've paid out $20-something thousand on that already. We're in line to get 17 of that back. It's an 80-20 grant, so we get 80% of the grant's engineering fees back.
So you feel the 40,000 less in the next year budget
Yeah.
is just because we will not be requiring engineering services?
We
Okay.
won't be requiring as many engineering fees, and we're trying to get estimates on those so I can bring those to the board for you to let y'all know where we're at before we go forward.
Okay.
But as I've stated before, we have to pay the surveying and the engineering fees up front on these grants. So if we can control that a lot better, I think that will lower that line item, and hopefully we are in line to get some of those engineering fees back.
I'd also encourage, and I know we've talked about it prior, we even had a job description that we did with City Manager Hyatt, but I'd also encourage, as you get your feet on the ground, that if there is a part-time engineer that for 37,000 would be on salary, on staff, just want to help, I know that's kind of a wish, But if we're paying 62,000 to an engineer and we can get one on staff on a salary to be with us all the time, I believe that would be a good direction, and we've talked about it more than once, of that would be a good direction versus paying pro bono, not pro bono, kind of à la carte,
Yes.
the engineers we currently have.
Okay. I'll be looking into that for you. And Frank, you want to expand on
Well,
that?
think about that in 2016.
But if we're paying, but we've got in the budget 37,000, if we could hire someone, it would just be a change in who we call when we call.
That's right. Mayor, we will look at any way we can to cut, cost. But to hire an engineer is going to cost a lot more than 37,000 or 40,000 a year. And to have one that's a PE, which is what our consultant is, it would cost a lot. It's going to cost considerably more than that. Until we have that much work, full-time work, that would be the time to look at it. When it is a full-time job and we need that much done. But right now, I think we're still in a period where it's only part-time. So I think it's the best way. Plus, we're also getting a lot of experience and expertise from someone who's worked with the city for a long time and a group that knows a lot about the grants and things we're working on. So, I think at this point, but we will be glad to look at that.
And yeah,
in
keeping
the
an open
future.
door.
We don't want to go way up with engineering fees when we could pick it up. But at this point, we're trying to hold down those costs, and so much of it, like Mr. Hall has said, has been paid. We've paid engineering fees for the safe routes to school. We've got some of that done. And we've paid engineering fees for the resurfacing, and also for the Lake Van project. And that may need to be updated or something, but it's not going to be the layout we've had for engineering fees. We want to use some of the things we've paid for. That's what we're trying to do.
That would be great. But someone part-time, there was a gentleman that offered his services. He's a full-time, owns his business. And that's why I come up, because he offered to part-time do things that could be helpful. And when we did the job description about a year ago almost, of if that's something we walk into, of hiring an engineer part-time or full-time, what would the job description be? We might need to get that in front of y'all, the job description that we approved for a line item of an engineer in the codes department
Okay.
that had I don't know that we had a dollar attached to it, but it was what we will need in the future.
Right. We'll be
Okay,
glad to
we've
look at it.
exhausted that, thank you. All right, 510, and these again are just clarifications, I'm not sure where to find the answers. You've got a 168 projected for 13, 14, and 199. Was new property, or is that just a increase in premium?
That's an
That
increase in,
30,000.
that's an increase in premium.
30,000 for 1 year in our property and liability insurance.
Yes. It's also workman's comp. And we had a lot of claims in both workman's comp and property this year that drove it up. Our TML bases their rates based on how hot the claims are. So if
Who
you
monitors that, like HR of validity? And again, I'm probably asking a bad question, but who monitors the workman's comp to make sure that it's not is that Mr. Russo? I see you pop up, to where that's fair and reasonable, or the claims are reasonable, or we're in a runaway train that needs to be maybe in training and education and OSHA stuff? I mean, help me here at 30,000 a year. What can we do not to make that happen over and over again?
Not sure that you can actually train accidents not to happen, or water pipes not to break, or deers jump in front of automobiles, or employees get hurt while they're training. We had a couple of those really bizarre incidents this year, both in fire and police. Automobile accidents that were unusual this year. Property damage right here in this building. According to TML, we have a great rate. We have a good experience we were getting the benefit of having a good experience at very low rates. We began to have a moderate experience, and that rate increased. That's an answer to your question.
Well, it is, but I say OSHA. I don't know if is that OSHA who does around here?
You got two around here, you got OSHA and you got Tennessee, same things, Tennessee OSHA.
We work
Basically
directly
responsible to
with,
both of them.
TOSHA. which-
TOSHA, that's one
Yes,
here,
that's two
Tennessee.
of them, yeah.
Okay.
And we certainly do look at, we have full-time trainers at the fire department, we have full-time, or we have training responsibility shared over a couple of people within the police department. The safety committee works constantly trying to make sure that we instruct our employees how to be safe at work. But again, there are some accidents that take place, some of them are just freakish. That no matter what sort of training, some of these are just accidents. Nobody deliberately does those.
Sure, and nobody wants to get hurt. So you said there was several workman's comp claims. When you say that, is that 2, 20? What kind of number are you saying is several for this year?
Experience last year, we had around 16 reported accidents. Out of those, one has been really a prolonged recovery. We had a reserve officer that tore his ACL, had to have surgery. He's received quite a bit of medical attention as a result of that. A couple of firefighters that were injured. We had some of the nuisance things were insect bites, exposure to dreaded disease, had to be checked, TB, even had some exposed to what we thought was whooping cough.
So most all these are within the norm.
Exactly. You have the staff that we
Thank
have, the opportunities to get hurt that fire and police run into, street department, park department. These things happen, and
So we just went from
get injured while they're working.
We just went from a great figure to a normal figure.
Absolutely. We had just an extremely good good low number of occurrences. Now we're at what I would say a moderate number.
Okay. Thank you.
And this is also includes property, the new vehicles that were purchased. This is all three.
That's what I was looking for, something different from last year
Yeah,
that can
there-
accredit a premium increase.
It does include all the new
Vehicles.
property.
Well, we had a guy that got a deer destroyed a car last year on 840, is that right? How many thousand was that?
Well, we've actually had that happen several times. We
Right,
had a
but-
tree fall on one.
Unavoidable,
they
yeah.
claimed we've had 3 car and deer incidents in the last 12 months. And people in this area hit deer, and our patrol cars have hit them.
So when you say new property, the new fire truck, the new police cars, all of those is increase of that $30,000 premium. That makes great sense versus a couple falls and whooping coughs claims. Thank you.
But it could go really high quick
But-
if we have a couple employees.
But the property,
workman's
if you
comp
put it,
firm.
if you put it between, if you rated the expenses, the property is the least expensive. I mean,
In a
workman's comp's
breakdown.
the highest, and then the liability, and then the property.
Okay. All right, the last clarification is 931. You have street paving and improvements, and I know we've talked about street resurfacing and some things that we did on King Road in different areas, and I know we've got the MPO money, but you've had a 174 projected of expenses for this year, and then you estimated 25,000 for next year. Tom
What line
Key,
item again are we on?
931. At 174,659 as the end of this year projected of expenditure. And then next year, you have proposed only $25,000. And I'll direct that to Keith, department head, or you, or city manager.
I believe a big portion of that is the road widening.
Oh, okay.
So in 2014, 2015, we have an estimate that we're only going to spend $25,000
That's actually
on
what-
streets.
That's actually what.
And
we did in the budget
improvements.
last year.
Say again?
That was the same amount that was put in last year?
It was 55,000 last year. Budgeted for 13-14 was 50, wait, I moved, it was 145,000 last year.
That's not necessary, that's, if there was a budget amendment, that pops that number up. So that is not necessarily what was in the original budget. It may have been amended, the budget may be amended throughout the year.
Okay, and ultimately, my question is not what is spent in the last 11 months, it's 25,000 for the next 12 months, meaning we're not going to do any street paving or improvements, and what is that 25,000 projected and proposed for?
Whatever kind of repairs that we need to make to the street. Nova one, Catherine Drive, I believe. We had to dig that up this year, and that's part of that. Resurface that.
And I think you gave us a bid on that about 2 or 3 months ago,
It was, I believe, about 10 grand.
10,000. Okay, so again, it's not necessarily what we did spend, it's the decline to where there's not any projects that we need to do in street paving and improvements other than Catherine this year?
Well, no, I mean, that one goes towards pothole repairs and everything else. We're actually looking for the, I believe.
Yes.
Street aid, a check will be coming in the next couple years?
We get,
For what?
the state every 4 years, TDOT gives us 4-year allotment.
Yes.
Street aid so that we can pave and stuff.
That goes into our revenues under the street aid revenue.
Yes,
Based on
ma'am.
population.
Okay.
correct.
That's when we get that check, is when we decide what projects we want to do. This $25,000 looks like a great drop because the money included in fiscal year 13-14 was the $145,000 that we spent on widening Bowie Lake Road. So if you take that 145 out of the 172 spent,
48.
it's about the same amount of money, but it's for pothole stuff.
Right.
When we get the big check from the state, then that's when we go in and say, okay, we want to widen Chester Road, or we want to do this, or we want to do that.
Okay, where does the MPO money come in that we have for the collector roads that we're working with the MPO for? Where's that money at, and where is those projects at in this budget?
I don't know where it's at in the budget, but that would be the resurfacing grant.
So where would it be in expenditures if we're going to spend that money?
I would imagine, Tom,
If it's
once
not
we
in
get the
street paving
grant,
and
you would have to
improvements.
appropriate it for that, right?
Yes, I've not received any numbers or any projections as far as MPO money. If we're going to get money, I believe we can do a budget amendment and spend it, but I'm not familiar with that money.
So any of these grants, we would have to have that money, and it's nowhere in this budget.
Right.
Yeah, I'm just.
And these are
confirming
MPO
with-
projects, the connector roads, which is Chester. I'm not real sure if Mr. Frank has plugged into that. It's the reason I'm looking, but I don't want to hold him responsible.
There'll be, at the time we get that grant, we will be looking at what our match will be and committing to that match. My understanding, that would be a capital project, and it would be separate from just the street department's budget. But I don't know where the money's, I'm not answering the question where the money's coming from. I know we'll need,
75-25 grant.
yeah, so it could
So
be,
we'll be out about $97,000.
Yes, right, that's what the-
Figures are right.
the figures they sent us, we're looking at $97,000, but the total project would
We
be,
had a $186,000 grant that we were in the middle of in, last year this time
Which road?
with MPO. And then we also had the Safe Routes to School, which was also, we'll get back to that.
Can I add something?
Yes.
When, and John's not here, but John and I worked on this. We got in a request before Frank showed up. And so John and I were working on it in terms of federal money. And we put in for reimbursement, I think it was and correct me, Wayne, if I'm wrong, but it was like $117,000 plus some engineering fees
Plus the engineering fees.
that we submitted. So that money's not in here either.
Right, and I signed for it, and that's why I'm chasing it, trying to figure out,
The idea being that if we're going to adopt a conservative approach, until that money hits the door, we don't turn around and allocate that money back out again. So when that money comes in, that's the part of it that we can then turn around, because that's reimbursement, that's our money coming back to us. We can turn around and use that to be the matching part of whatever we need for this next grant. So, in terms of an appropriation, as I understand it, working with John on that response, as I understand it, that's where our money's gonna come from to do our portion as part of the MPO to do the paving projects and stuff like that.
okay, so to reiterate, at this point, we don't have any projects this year in street paving or road improvements. The 25 is just for potholes and miscellaneous,
Yes.
General repairs.
okay? I said it was the last one, but machinery and equipment on 940, you project to have spent $34,429 this year, and you have a proposal of $105,000. Machinery and equipment, 940.
Yes.
Give me clarity on that, please.
Yes, all the machinery and equipment are coming either out of park fund or state street aid, which are considered general fund categories, but they are they are assigned monies, so they're not unassigned.
So the entire $105,000 is already spent?
It's coming out of either the drug fund or state street aid, and no, it has not been spent, but it's coming.
It's been obligated,
Yes,
voted on in vehicles and,
and chipper and what,
Well, some of it's been put out for bid, but not all of it. Only the truck it's been put.
okay, so the transportation equipment of $113,000, I thought maybe that was where that was, so now give me clarity of what that figure is proposed for. That's line 944.
I know.
Is that the cost of the radios for the police cars?
No,
It was $108,000, wasn't it?
I don't believe it was that much.
Okay, just, I'll be quiet.
On the 9, hold on, give me just a second.
Are we having fun
Okay,
yet?
25 of the 944 is coming out of state street aid. And 87,650 of the 940 is coming out of state street aid. Taking notes for me. And I believe the rest of it, let's see,
So 940 and 944 is coming out of state street aid.
and then out of parks is 35,000. 944. And out of the drug fund, there's 53,334 going to 944.
So 940,
There's 10,000 in the drug fund of the 940.
95,000, where's that coming from?
Keeping it added up over there.
This is just like a workshop. And see, oh, while he's looking, because that's 218,000 of expenses. And, you know, when we lasso around the added taxes included in the proposed budget, and it covers it and it balances, that's all well and good. But when you start looking at
It's-
services or things that you
that's
say,
most
okay,
of
we
it.
don't have enough money to do that,
The rest of it's,
doesn't answer it if it's already obligated. But it does say that's what you're going to win, because it actually is things that we now are obligated to.
We
sorry.
can hear you now.
Woke everybody up.
That's all of 944.
Okay, all of 944 is either in parks or the drug fund.
Or State Street.
Or state street aid.
Okay, got that.
And then
940.
940, the majority of it, would you say 90%? 95? 95% of it is in state street aid, the drug fund. There-
10,000 in the drug fund and 95,000 out of State Street.
Yes.
That's what I was looking for, thank you.
And then there may be a couple other line items in a couple of departments, very small, that's where the difference is.
So all the money that, as stated, 4 years we get State Street aid money. All of that money that's being deposited to Fairview for preparing and taking care and maintaining and improvement of roads and streets and bridges, it's being eat up in this year's budget. Street aid, state street aid, what you said, in almost towards the vehicles?
I think there's a misunderstanding. I think the check Commissioner Massell is talking about is a separate check that comes in once every 4 years. Now, I've never seen one, so I'm not sure. I'll be happy when it comes in. But we do get a monthly
Right,
allotment.
I knew that.
Okay, so
It's
that's,
two separate.
Well, I knew he had said something about a bigger one, but I knew there was monthly, and that's,
and our monthly, we get about right at $200,000 a year in state street aid.
okay, so we're spending all of it in the vehicles, the chipper, things that you, except for the park, sorry about the park piece. Point being is that money is being used for differences of what it should be used for the benefit, this is my opinion, I'm entitled to it, but that money's being put into Fairview's benefit for the roads and the improvements and the streets and the bridges and things of that nature. That's why that money comes to us,
Or equipment to do those things.
or equipment to do those things, okay. And I'll leave that conversation. So that's why I was saying, if that, where's that money going to, when we need those improvements? That's why I asked, are we doing no improvements this year? And it was because we have no money. If we needed to do a bridge on Horn Tavern Road drastically, desperately one lane, we don't have the money. That money that comes for that purpose is being utilized on other things. Just a point, my opinion. I would like to see it where it was more reasonably looked at for the benefits of the future improvements versus, yay, we got it, let's see what we can spend it on that we might want. And then we have I'm sure, a decision of what we need and what we want. Could be two different things, but everybody's got an opinion.
Well, I'd like to express mine now. That the money is sent for us to make a determination as to what we need, not want, what we need. And maintaining safe and working equipment in order to take care of what you already have is as pressing a need as building or repairing a road. So I have a difference of opinion that the money is not being misspent or
Never
not
said
being
misspent.
not allocated that way.
and it shows in our vote. So we'll leave that to move on. We have 5 more minutes. Does anybody have anything or
Well,
questions?
I just want to just ask one question. Tom, is everything that's been spent out of that fund part of a requirement that they be spent on?
I mean, has it been spent on what it's supposed to be spent on?
Everything, yes?
Yes.
Okay,
And
that's
there
all I've
should,
got.
there is a, should be a little bit of a reserve in there in case an emergency
But
comes up.
everything that is spent on is what qualifies to be spent on?
Yes.
Thank you.
Other comments? Great conversation.
Did you have anything to add now that, I know Donna, once you looked over this, did y'all meet again before
No, we
this?
haven't.
Oh, okay. I didn't know
That's
since it.
fine, she's got something to say.
Well, have you looked over what he presented tonight?
Yes, I have. I would just say that we need to look at it monthly and make sure that we're headed in the right direction and not wait even 3 months to address it if we're not. But we have so much of our budget is in employees, in insurance, and debt service, that there's very little left that you can cut and still have anything to do. So I don't think we need to go there yet, but we need to be right on top of it. That's what I think.
What is the percentage of the employee of our current budget?
I think it's,
60%.
I think it's about 70.
70?
I don't think it's that high,
I think it's about
It's close.
64.
unless you include the insurance.
If you include the benefit and the insurance.
If you take your employees and the insurance and the debt service is 75%. So
But if you remove the debt service, it's closer to 64.
probably.
Yeah, that's what I looked at.
And that's top end. Minutes are ticking. Other comments from the commissioners at this time?
I just want to thank y'all for your hard work that you put in. I know it's been pressing. I think you've lost some weight.
I don't know.
So I appreciate all the work y'all done on it.
Is it proper, Mayor, to set a date for that special meeting to deal with this?
Deal with the ordinance piece?
Have the first read?
The ordinance,
Can't do it on the 5th.
no, because we won't have full
You
board.
could have the first read, but if you end too tight, you're not gonna end.
That's the reason I was saying that.
So,
Well, the ordinance piece is going to have to go on,
Well, we have 2 ordinances to clarify. One is the employee piece that's been brought up, and the other is the adopting of a budget that,
having the first read so that we
Yeah.
can have a second read
Gotcha.
on 6/19. How many days, Larry, do we have to have?
10?
What would be the last date that we could have a special meeting? Monday the 9th?
It's 10
The
days.
thing that's going to get you is the 10-day publication notice.
but you said we could put that in the paper even before.
You
for
can put it in the
public
paper
hearing.
before, but you're going to have to decide when your meeting's going to be.
Well, that's what, we could put, we have to have, how much between the first read and the second read?
You, on any ordinance that's not otherwise directed by statute, you have to have 7 complete days, which means you've got to have 8 days between them, because you wouldn't have 7 complete days until that 8th day comes around.
Second reading and public hearing on the 19th, then we have to have the special meeting either on the 9th or the 10th.
That would be correct, assuming that you put your notice out before you had the meeting.
Well, we just put one notice in the paper that says we'll have a special meeting for first read on the 9th or the 10th, that's a Monday or a Tuesday, and then we will have a second reading on, and public hearing on 6/19.
Is Friday the 6th available? I will not be,
The 10th is, that's your planning
be
commission
back?
meeting,
So we have a planning commission meeting on what day? 8th?
the 10th.
will you be back the 6th?
Larry, I thought you just had to publicize the,
I won't be here
Second
the
read.
week of the 9th. I'll be out of the country.
You have to post your first reading, but you have to you put it in the paper like you normally do for your first reading, but the second reading has to have a 10-day notice between the first reading and the second reading. It has to be published so that your public hearing is going to also be held. And you also have to include your tax rate.
And the tax rate will be, who will present the tax rate so we can put that in the ordinance?
That's in the ordinance. It's number 9, I believe, in the ordinance.
It's just got a blank. Did we just not put it in?
If we're gonna set
Well,
it,
I don't know what it's going to be until you guys set it.
6.3, whatever, if that's what.
Yeah, but where do,
6.3 point whatever, 7.
Yeah, we can extend we can extend the budget. If we see that we're running out of time, you can file for extension.
You can, but you're going to be in the comptroller's doghouse.
You're gonna be what?
In the comptroller's doghouse.
I'm not afraid of that.
Yeah, we should be in there anyway. No, I'm joking, I'm teasing.
What happens
I'm
is,
teasing.
if you don't pass it by July 1st, your current budget is extended until such time as you do pass it.
Is there any prohibition against having it on a Saturday?
Absolutely not.
Let's have it on
okay,
Saturday.
well, why couldn't we, I don't mind that. Let me look at this. Why couldn't we have a special meeting the last week of June instead of trying to shove it into the 19th?
Well,
You talking about
we
for your
can do
second
that too,
reading?
But we still got to have 10, there's not 10 days, is there, between the 19th and the end of the month? Is there enough time to get it done?
I think so. I think it's 29th, isn't it?
If you advertised it ahead, there would be. That your second meeting was going to be, because
The
the 19th, you'd have, the 30th would be 11 days, wouldn't it?
I mean, that's okay with me, too. I mean, I just want us to pass the budget by the time the month rolls around.
Yeah, the 30th would be the 11th day, so you'd be safe. If you, assuming that you put out your notice that you're going to have it on the 30th, prior to that meeting on the 19th, so that it could get in the paper.
And Monday, 30th.
That's okay with me.
All right, so would a motion be that we have first read on the 19th with a notice being placed out for a final read and, no, a public hearing on the 30th?
That would be acceptable, but you need to advertise both of them, the tax rate and the second reading of the
For the 30th?
budget. Yes, ma'am.
Larry, is it proper for us to vote on a motion tonight?
Yes, we have it on the agenda for
Yeah.
discuss under
Why we
action.
want a
This-
special meeting.
I just want to make sure.
This would be part of your budget, so it's broad enough to include setting your special meeting.
I make a motion that we have first read June the 19th, the regular meeting on June the 19th, and that we call a special meeting for public hearing and special read, second reading on June the 30th at 7 o'clock.
Second.
Okay. 7 PM,
Yes, ma'am.
discussion?
No, the only thing I would be concerned is, are we including any ordinance that we would have to be done with the?
Employee piece?
Yeah, the employee piece, or we can still have enough time to do that?
It could be on the 19th budget, 19th agenda.
Ask for that to be put
Yeah, you don't have to have a public hearing on that.
Yeah, but no, we would be better off to know where we're gonna stand, because I don't wanna wait until the 19th and all of a sudden say, oh, wait, we have to have it, then we're not gonna have a balanced budget. So I'm trying to figure out how we can do it as soon as possible.
Well, the thing about
To-
the first read on the 19th is that we'll have discussion again that night, and we'll also have another month's of experience with the Walmart money.
Yeah, but we also
Recommend.
will have to have the 2 readings to change,
Your pay plan ordinance.
Employee thing.
what now?
It's to change your pay plan ordinance,
Yeah.
Yes.
because that's part of
You
your
could
policies
add
and
that. I
procedures.
know the agenda's been publicized, but if you wanted to, on the 5th, you could add that to the meeting. On the 5th, add it to the agenda, deal with it the first time on the 5th, and then on the 19th, we would be able to have a final vote.
I would feel better that way. I mean, to go ahead and start, to
Well,
know
we-
where we stand.
But we
Yeah.
do need to have discussion of it because we, may not know all pros and cons and what that is. I mean, if it's just an app, we don't have the money, so the ordinance has to be addressed in a delay or a deny or a change. But we'd have to have some kind of communication of what would be the plan of action if that's what we would address. Because you'd have to explain to the employees what you're doing,
I
why.
can be persuaded, but my position going in is I would vote to delay it, but I can't see voting to deny it. I think people have been working for the past year under that assumption, and that we could find that $48,000 somewhere else before we could not pay them. But I'm willing to listen to reason about, waiting to make sure that the money's coming in like whatever. So but that doesn't mean, there's still 4 of you. If you felt strongly about it, you could do it. I'm just telling you, to have it on June the 5th and me not be here, I still have my chance to vote on the 19th, one way or the other. So in order to meet the time frame, I think you have to put it on the agenda, and y'all have to talk about where you would come down.
Okay. Other discussion? At this point, the motion is for the first read of the ordinance and the budget for 2014-15 to be put on the June 19th agenda, and then for the timing for it to be a second read, final read, and public hearing on June 30th at 7 p.m.
That also needs to include your tax rate.
Tax rate, I got that, didn't say it, sorry. All right, other discussion?
Tom, this assumption is based upon current tax rate, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Can you tell us what each penny, by the 19th, not tonight.
I think I'll do it tonight.
Can you have the information?
I got it tonight.
What each penny would do in terms of revenue?
Yes.
All right, go ahead, city manager.
I have that answer now if you want it. I have that answer now if
We've
you
got
want
a
it.
question.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I want to hear.
yeah.
Each penny would create $16,800 in revenue.
Okay. All right, in respect to time, at 7:01, I have Section 8 of the ordinance. I have highlighted a detailed financial plan will be attached to this budget, becomes part of the budget ordinance. In addition, the published operating budget and budgetary comparisons shown by fund with beginning and ending fund balances and the number of full-time equivalent employees required by Section 6-56-206 will be attached. Is everything in here, or are we missing what I read just now?
You're missing the fund beginning, and you got it's basically, I just gotta put it in, type it in, but it's, the meat of the information's there. I've gotta put in the employees, and I've gotta put in beginning and ending balance.
Okay, because when it says see attached, it's either attached or we don't have it, so I wanted to clarify that I didn't have it, and that we'll need that for review prior to being said it's added and we didn't have time to review it.
Right.
Okay, and there was a motion made, and it.
Discussion?
Yeah, we were
We're
in
gonna finish
discussion.
discussion, I went off topic on discussion. Thank
So we
you.
might wanna vote.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you for that direction. Motion for adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
Thank you for your attention. Thank you, people in the crowd.